Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes. The US has slapped sanctions on the International Criminal Court. President Donald Trump calls the ICC's probes into the US and Israel illegitimate and baseless. The move follows an arrest warrant for Israeli PM Benjamin Netanyahu. The sanctions freeze assets and impose travel bans on ICC officials. Israel has praised the decision, calling the court's actions immoral. The ICC, however, has condemned the sanctions. It vows to continue delivering justice worldwide. Neither the US nor Israel are ICC members, while the court has been investigating alleged war crimes in Afghanistan and Gaza. There's been no immediate reaction from the targeted officials. Joining us to discuss this topic and debate, we are joined by 5 guests. We are joined firstly by Aharon Levarko, who is an Israeli television and radio correspondent joining us from Israel. We have Walter Anderson with us, who's a political analyst joining us from the USA. We have Daniel Wagner, who is the CEO of the Country Risk Solutions, joining us from Portland in the USA. We have Raymond Vickery, who's a former US Assistant Secretary of Commerce in Washington. Raymond Vickery, I'd like to come to you first, please, to discuss Trump's statements about the ICC, and I really want to delve deeper into these. Is this just something he's done following the meeting with Benjamin Netanyahu in the White House, or is this something that he's been feeling for a long time in terms of the sort of disdain for the ICC and their policies and their sanctions?
Thanks for having me, Joshua. I think this is a long-standing theme in the Trump psyche, and that is that it's America über alles, and you do not question under a rule of law rubric anything which the nation would decide to do. It's a completely different view of international relations from that which has prevailed basically since World War II, and that is that the rule of law is in the interest of all nations. Now, of course, in regard to the ICC, the United States does not have a pretty history overall. But this isn't something new coming out of the meeting with Netanyahu. It's a long-held approach of Trump, and unfortunately, it bleeds over literally into all aspects of his worldview, and the leadership which the United States has provided in trying to build some international standards since World War II, so we don't slip back into every nation for itself, is very much weakened at this point.
Aharon Levarko, I'd like to come to you for an Israeli perspective on this. Of course, the ICC have imposed sort of sanctions and charges towards Benjamin Netanyahu and members of his top team relating to war crimes and alleged genocide. What's the feeling in Israel over the ICC sort of jurisdiction?
I think in general it's a positive thing, especially for Israelis that want to travel abroad, including politicians, military men, military women, who have basically been threatened of being arrested in a lot of countries around the world. So I think the general feeling is one of positivity and a sense of relief as well. Not to forget that Israel is not part of the international ICC, so they're not even recognized as part of it. So to actually have sanctions placed upon Israel has been very difficult to take. Yeah, I think the feeling is generally a positive one, and especially when you think towards the beginning of the war, when the international community had 17 of the top judges around the world make a decision whether what Israel was accused of doing genocide, and it was pretty much almost 100% unanimous that no, they were not guilty of genocide, and yet sanctions were placed in any event. So it's a lot of relief and a sense of justice in a way. But I think there's going to be follow-up to this. You know, the ICC are protesting. They're condemning this decision. Let's see what happens in the next round.
Yes, and Walter Anderson, I'd like to sort of look ahead now and look over the coming days. Of course, the ICC have responded and they've condemned Trump's actions. But do you think this is something that could wage on for a while longer, and what those implications might be?
I don't see a change in U.S. negativity regarding the decision. But there's a long history of that Ray alluded to. Biden also opposed any kind of sanctions on ICC sanctions on Netanyahu and his former defense minister. And this goes back a long way. And I'd say that the decision, there are groups in the United States who are outraged by the U.S. negativity on this, but I'd say the general, maybe Ray, you could, affirm or not, because you've been here and I've been out of the country. I think generally the country is opposed to this. U.S. has historically been, we didn't join the League of Nations partly for this reason, that the notion of sovereignty came in and we didn't want to sort of lose our sovereignty. And then there have been decisions since then that we have been very negative about, like the previous prosecutor of the ICC was considering charges against U.S. soldiers in Afghanistan, and that outraged a lot of people. So this is a decision, I'd say, people I've talked to anyway, by and large are skeptical, but then I think the U.S. viewpoint is more supportive of what the Trump administration has done. I mean, there's some obviously standouts. The ACLU and other groups, rights groups, have criticized the administration for taking the stand. But my old colleague at the State Department, David Makovsky, wrote an excellent piece arguing not so much in favor of what Trump has done, but trying to understand it, and said that he typically takes a maximalist view on issues, we know, like the Denmark and Greenland issue, which I don't think he really means. But does he mean this? I suspect this one he does mean, rather than as a bargaining point for some negotiations in the future. So I think from the purpose of the United States, certainly this administration, I think he's going to stick with his negative view on the ICC ruling and the sanctions he's imposed, both on, and it's not just the prosecutor, but it's the family. Anybody involved in this is subject to assets being frozen and travel in the U.S. being denied. And there may in fact likely be some negotiations about the extent to which those sanctions apply and exactly what they are, but I don't see them changing anytime soon, especially because it's a bipartisan issue. As I said, President Biden criticized this issue almost in the same negative terms that President Trump has done so.
Absolutely. Also joining us is Ali Bushback, who is an independent Palestinian researcher who's joining us from Cairo. Ali, thank you very much for your time. I'd like to get the sort of different perspective on this. Of course, the ICC and their sanctions on Israel are directly relating to a conflict that we know has been ongoing for months and months. In terms of the support that the ICC have had from some nations, and definitely not condemnation like we've seen, of course, by Israel and the US, do you think that that sort of is something that Palestinians are feeling backed by? And do you think that the ICC will be able to have any jurisdiction over what's happening in Gaza?
Okay, thank you for having me. I guess in my belief, what is happening nowadays, it's blurred things. I guess that Donald Trump is so excited to impose his political and his politics in the region. I mean, Middle East region. Things is it's unacceptable, such kind of ICC, particularly Palestinian. They have a tight relation with their land and with their community. So, and we have seen during 15 months of the war between Gaza and Israel, Palestinians resist a long time. So, in my belief in this, definitely, if they're going to be applied, it will obviously fragment the Palestinian community, and it will fragment the Palestinian case, since the Palestinians, they are demanding for self-determination and for two-state solution. between Israel and Palestinians. So in my belief, such kind of behavior, I guess, it's I mean, the Middle East community, they are receiving such kind of with a shock. No one could believe in what's happening, and no one can be clarify what is such kind of policy, and that's in my belief. That's it.
Daniel Wagner, thank you very much for waiting while we spoke with our other guests. We should, of course, talk about the sort of previous 72 hours or so following Trump's announcement regarding the Riviera of the Middle East and the implications. Something Ali mentioned there was a two-state solution, something which, of course, under Trump's plans wouldn't be the case. But bringing it back to the current situation in the Middle East, what do you think the feeling is sort of geopolitically across the world around what's happening?
Well, the term ethnic cleansing is not a very nice term. And the vision of a Trump hotel on the Gaza Riviera is not a very, very nice vision. This has been so controversial and so roundly criticized in so many quarters around the world over the last 3 days. It would be surprising if Trump would have simply backed down with this proposal, but instead he's doubled down. And now we have heard that Israel is prepared to basically start shipping Palestinians out of Gaza. But my question is, to where? I mean, no regional country has said they're willing to accept more Palestinian refugees. Jordan can't take any more. Egypt is very sensitive to this for political reasons. Lebanon isn't in a position to do it. Syria isn't in a position to do it. Who's going to do it? And that raises the question, where is the support among any Middle Eastern country for taking Palestinian refugees? And why are countries that could potentially otherwise take Palestinian refugees not stepping up to the plate to offer to do so? In the absence of that, I don't see how this proposal works. It is distasteful on many levels, to say the least. And I would have thought that Mr. Trump would be spending his time in the first few weeks of his administration on other issues that are not seemingly so controversial. On the other hand, I do give him credit for having raised the Gaza issue to the front of the table once again, when it is sort of fading from the background in the process. And if it succeeds in getting more people to focus on this issue and succeeds in generating some kind of an out-of-the-box solution, which is probably not going to be very good for the Palestinians any way you slice it, it may not be such a bad thing. But let me just add one more thing, and that is, if you've got a situation like Gaza, which has been totally obliterated over the last year plus, what exactly is supposed to be done? And how is the plight of the Palestinian people supposed to be addressed in the interim? Clearly, an out-of-the-box solution is required.
Absolutely. Aharon Levako, I'd like to come back to you. Of course, we've seen unity here with Trump and his words leading up to his inauguration, talking about bringing all hell on Hamas if all hostages weren't released. We've now seen these ICC sanctions and the conversation between Netanyahu and Trump. In terms of the people within Israel, there of course has been some discontent. Benjamin Netanyahu isn't currently in the strongest position at home in terms of politically. Do you think this decision is going to boost Netanyahu's popularity now that he's so clearly being backed by one of the most powerful people in the world?
Well, you know, they say a cat has 7 lives, and I think Benjamin Netanyahu has probably had about 77 lives. No question about it. This has definitely boosted Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah, who? You know, Trump is a businessman, and he has a reputation of putting left field, way out bargains on the table deliberately, seeing what kind of response people will give. And people can come back with disagreements and resistance, and he might play along with that. That may be part of his goal. We don't know. The real issue is what are the other options? What, when you look at Gaza, when you look at the state of Gaza, it's a mess. It's, people are talking about 5 years to 7 years to build. No, it's going to be more like 15 or 20 years. So who's going to look after the Palestinian people in the meantime? So he's put what some people consider crazy idea. There has to be a crazy idea. There's no other option at the moment. And I think what Mr. Wagner has asked the question, who's out there to help? We're waiting for some Muslim nation, maybe Qatar, maybe the Saudis. Let's see if Saudi get on board of the Abraham peace accords. Let's see what happens. I think Trump, by putting this on the table, he's putting bait out there. He's wanting people to maybe take a reaction, and let's see what happens.
Aaron, just very quickly coming back to you, you mentioned the Muslim nations needing to sort of take some responsibility. Do you think Israel should take any responsibility for making sure that the Gazans are placed somewhere while the Gaza Strip is rebuilt?
No question about it. Absolutely, they are part of it. They've been taking responsibility right throughout the war as far as dropping pamphlets, sending millions of tons of food through. Donald Trump and the American administration, they seem to be taking the main lead in this. Israel will do its part, no question, for sure.
Raymond Vickery, I want to come back to Trump's movements over the past 2 or 3 days and look at his motives. We know, of course, there is that ally in Israel, but him looking to sort of take over the Gaza Strip and do what he wants to, what do you think his personal motive in that instance really is?
Look, the man's a real estate developer. He's used to having things knocked down and built again. That's the way he sees it. I do not put it past him to see personal or company advantages to the Trump organization in this. It's a mindset that he brings to it, which is really totally different from the way the United States has operated, at least since World War II. And what he is after at this point is what he's been after all along, which is aggrandizement. Aggrandizement not only for him personally, but for organizations that he controls, and now the United States. That's America first. Look, with international cooperation and looking at this problem as one which can be solved, 2 million people in a Gaza Strip like that is not an insurmountable problem. After World War II, Europe was in ruins. The United States took leadership along with others, and it was rebuilt. It is not necessary to resort to ethnic cleansing. It's not necessary to just look at it as a corporate venture to build Trump Towers on the Mediterranean. What is necessary is what the United States used to stand for. And now that's very much in question. And now it's time for other great democracies, such as India, such as those in the EU, to step up and to provide some overall leadership. It's not that Israel doesn't have a right to defend itself or to exist, but what it doesn't have a right to do is just operate on its own with the 2,000-pound bomb from the United States and do whatever it pleases. Might making right is not going to lead to a peaceful solution, and peace, like war, must be waged, and it has to be waged with allies and cooperation, not everybody for himself.
Ali, I'd like to come back to you and build on what Raymond said there. Of course, 2 million people living in Gaza, which has been all but destroyed. Do these discussions sort of leave those living within Gaza feeling almost like pawns in a diplomatic game almost that they have no part in and they're not at the table? How do you think the feeling is within Palestine and within Gaza?
Okay, but let me just correct Aaron. He was saying the state of Gaza. Gaza is a part of the state of Palestine. So there is a first point. And secondly, I want to turn your attention about Donald Trump's decision. I guess Palestinian has leadership to decide what they should do. And I guess in 1993, when Palestinian, I guess about Oslo agreement between Israel and Palestinian IDF, Palestinian between Israel and Palestinian Liberation Organization. So also Palestine or Gaza, West Bank and Gaza, it was not that full developed when the Palestinians start leading Gaza and West Bank or Jericho. So they started building their country for next step for a new Palestinian state. So in my opinion, Palestinian has ability to rebuild their rubble. They have ability to rebuild their country. So this is in my opinion. So who is Donald Trump to decide on behalf of Palestinian? And as well as I would like to inform you that about Donald Trump or America rule in Palestinian and Israel discussion about peace. So there is there is the credibility. They lost their credibility in the mediation between Palestinian and Israel about the solution of about peace solution. So in my opinion, Palestinian now they are decided. As I asked many Palestinians on the ground from Gaza who also replaced forcibly to replace their home and to leave their home during the war from northern Gaza to southern Gaza. Now they realize the attach of their country or their land. So when I ask them, are you able to leave if there is an immigration or if there is any kind of solution for you? No one accepted such kind of notion. As well as when Donald Trump, he decided the Palestinians should move to as a refugee to Egypt or Jordan. So in which rule he decided such kind of this decision as a Palestinian, like when the beginning of the war, the spokesman of the Israeli defense, Israelis military, he described Palestinian as a human animal, and now you are acting like they don't have any kind of determination, they don't have any kind of leadership. So in my opinion, such kind of international community and they are so ignoring the rule of Palestinian in such kind of point. This is in my opinion, and I guess the Palestinian leadership completely rejected the notion and rejected this kind of behavior from the Donald Trump, as well as Arabic notion, as you say, that who's going to rebuild Palestine or Gaza. And now the things is moved to West Bank, as we see that there is a systematic Israelis military campaign against some refugee camp in West Bank. So this is the part of the conflict between Palestinian or who's looking for their freedom and the occupation.
Absolutely. Yeah. Ali, I apologise to interrupt there. We are unfortunately out of time. Thank you very much also to Raymond, to Daniel, to Walter, and thank you to Aaron for joining us today. Of course, this situation in Gaza, in the Middle East and across the world is evolving, and we'll continue to bring you all the latest.